Wayne, welcome to the show, mate.
Yeah, thanks very much, James. It's a privilege to be on, mate. Thanks very much.
Mate, no, thank you so much. I stumbled across your story, mate, and it really did spark so much emotion, mate, and what you've been through over the last year or so. But mate, can you talk to me about Mac? Who was he as a person? What was he like?
Yeah. Well, Mac grew up as a happy young boy, and he loved sport. That was his real go. He loved basketball, he loved footy, loved running. And, when he went to primary school, that was his focus. He was pretty good at school, but not excellent. He then became captain of the school, which was great. Then he went on to secondary college and enjoyed that for the first 3 or 4 years. And again, the sport was the glue. He loved playing footy with his mates, loved playing basketball with his mates, and was real happy-go-lucky, very respectful. Like he'd never swear in front of me or, do anything that I wouldn't approve of in front of me. Of course, what he got up to after hours, I don't know, but you know what boys are like. But he was really respectful. He was also a really good and loyal mate. Subsequent to his passing, I've got to meet a lot of his mates on a one-on-one basis, and they all talk the same thing about his loyalty. Like if they needed help, he'd be the first to help them out, whatever that might be. So that was really nice trait he had as well. But of course, all things changed pretty quickly once, he was sexually extorted. So, but, leading up to that, he was very happy and very vibrant, and, he's captain of the footy team as well. So he's pretty happy.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And the initial grief, mate, I mean, it would have been just horrendous and what you had to go through. But, how did you cope with that? How did you get through it?
Yeah, James, the night before he passed away, we know now that he planned this probably 6 or 8 weeks beforehand. Most people that actually take their lives have planned it. It's not a spur of the moment thing. I've done a lot of research on it now, and that's what happens. And so, he planned that. And, the few days before, and particularly the night before, he was as happy as I've ever seen him. And I thought he'd turned the corner somewhat. And I thought, oh, this is great. He might be, back in form again. So everything was normal. We had a beautiful meal together, the four of us, and, Mac was kicking young Daisy, his younger sister, underneath the table because I was cracking some really stupid dad jokes and bad as well. And, it was a normal night, and then the last thing he said to me before he went to bed is that, hey, Dad, can I drive my car to work tomorrow? He was on L plates and he had a second-hand car that his elder brother had given him. And he said, can I drive that to work next morning? And I said, yeah, that'd be good. And where I'd sit in the passenger seat, he'd be in the driver's seat. And he'd done about 200 hours, so he's a good driver. And plan was, he'd drive me there, then I'd just drive the car back. And the last thing he said to me was, I can't wait to drive my car to work in the morning. And, then to wake up the next morning and, Daisy, his 14-year-old sister, and myself were only 2 in the house because my wife had gone to work already, and to, look at the clock and him that's his watch, by the way. So it wasn't that watch that I was looking at. And to see it 10 to 7, and he was normally up by 6:30. And so I knocked on his door and there's no answer. And then I opened the door and looked to the right, and there he was. He'd taken his own life. And, the shock and the horror and the grief, you blame yourself, and you sort of say to yourself, this can't be true. I'll wake up in a minute. It's a dream, but it's not, and I screamed that night or that morning, and Daisy was the only one in the house. She heard me scream and she sort of said, what's up, Dad? And I just said, ring 000, the emergency, which she did. By that stage, I was able to cut him down, and I remember his body being really cold and was really rigid, and his face had changed colour totally, lost all colour, and he passed away. I knew that. And I remember the one thing, James, that stands in my mind that I'll always remember is that when I was crying so much, the tears were just hitting his face, and then just to have to go out to his 14-year-old sister and tell her that, he'd passed away, it was just just incredible, you know, like you know what it's like, James. You're much younger than me, but when you grow up, you use your parents and maybe your older brothers or sisters or uncles or aunties or grandparents, if you're lucky, to learn life lessons, you know, how to be respectful, how to be honest and trustworthy and loyal. But no one teaches you how to handle a situation like that. And so you're just, you know, flying by the seat of your pants. You're just trying to do your best. And, you know, it was just a blur. It was really a blur. But those are the things that I remember quite clearly. And then, you know, to have to ring people to tell them that, you know, he'd passed away and to come home, and all of that was quite traumatic. And, you know, the paramedics that rushed into the house with the police, there's about 6 policemen, rushed in. And then I remember them just slowly walking out, you know, of his room. You know, that was the sign that they couldn't do anything. And they, you know, one of the coppers said to me, sorry, Wayno, he's passed away.
Shit. Yeah, mate. It's just so sad, and it's just so young, you know, and he had all his life ahead of him. And, it just reminds me, my dad, Wayne, passed away in 2020.
Right.
And we look at death you know, in a different way now, especially when a loved one passes. We just understand that time is very limited. We're only here on a finite amount of time, and it's just so precious. But, you know, was there some self-blame? I think you mentioned that there was some self-blame, and, you know, can you describe what that was like and how you felt?
Yeah, and it's a great question, James, and no questions off the table, because suicide prevention is on my agenda, and I've been working in that space now for a few months. But yeah, like I should have noticed, you know, he was sexually extorted. He lost his natural mother 100 days before. She died of MS. So they're two really obvious signs. You know, he wasn't travelling well. He wasn't his normal self. All those signs you should be, as a parent, picking up. And, you know, I blame myself that I didn't pick those things up, those obvious things, the euphoric nature he was just prior. And that's a really big sign, because he's happy that he's made the decision, and he's going to a better place in his mind, you know. So you do blame yourself. And I'm really fortunate, James. I linked up with a guy from Support After Suicide, Adrian Price, and he and I speak on a regular basis. You know, it was every week for a while. It's every second week now, and we have, you know, Mac passed away 39 weeks ago today, you know, and I've spoken to Sport After Suicide, Adrian, you know, every week and then every second week. And, you know, he said to me, you can't blame yourself. You know, you can't expect to know these things. The one thing I would say, though, that if I had known then what I know now, he would be alive, because there's so many signs that I would have been able to pick up on and look after him better.
Yeah. Wayne, I had the privilege of interviewing Samantha Wood. So Samantha Wood is a men's mental health advocate, and her brother Jamie tragically took his own life a couple of years ago. And I was saying to her, in everything that's happened right now, sometimes tragedy can spark a movement. And she said that it was the worst day of her life, but also she regained a sense of, she was able to leave a legacy. So I think, do you sometimes feel, though, you know, his death won't go in vain? You know, you're making an impact, and what you're doing now with SmackTalk, you know, it's really just bringing to light this whole idea of, you know, suicide and you know, what needs to be spoken about. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's absolutely, I agree with that, James. And look, you know, I'm a Christian, and I believe that, you know, Mac was taken from us for a reason. And maybe it was, one of the reasons was to ignite a fire in me to ensure that no other parent goes through what, Samantha and myself have gone through, you know. And as a parent, it's your worst nightmare. So, you know, SmackTalk is around a number of things, but, you know, I did a presentation today at Mordallock Secondary College for a couple of hundred kids in year 8. And I speak about social media because Mac was sexually extorted. So I talk about that and the perils of social media and the platforms that are inhabited by very evil people, and try to give them a sense of, urgency in terms of being a little bit more conservative with their approach and, not sending nudes, etc., to people you don't know, or don't send them at all. So that, and then when I talk to adults, and it's ticked over 5,000 people now in the last 10 weeks that I've spoken to, trying to fit that into my normal, work that I get paid for as a CEO of basketball. It's been really rewarding because I know there's been at least 3 people that we've saved through this program directly, and that doesn't count the people that we don't know that's just gone away and helped themselves or helped others. But we know that 3 people, we've got off the cliff, and that's really important. And so you talk about legacy, James. It's a really good point. Mac at 17 left no legacy other than his smiling face, and he could play footy reasonably well. That was it, but his legacy now in SmackTalk, the MAC in SmackTalk is reference to him, will be, we believe, is significant. And, we're doing a whole lot of work around suicide prevention. Probably January, February, a really good mate of mine writes for Code Sports, Paul Amy, and he said he'd write a story, which he did. And it was, probably page 67 of the Herald Sun here in Melbourne. And that was fantastic. It was a start. But we have created history in recent times, because only 5 weeks ago, for the first time in Australia's history, the country's history, that we had on every News Corp publication on a Saturday morning, which is the largest readership, on the front page, suicide prevention. So we've worked really hard to get to that stage. And what that does, of course, is that when you publicise suicide prevention, not the act, not the person, but the number, and you get that on the front page, it becomes newsworthy, and politicians then become interested. And coincidentally or not coincidentally, not many days after that, both the opposition and the government made statements about it. And we believe it will become an election issue. Yeah. We're working with News Corp with regard to their Let Kids Be Kids program, which is around increasing the age to 16 to access, some of the Meta platforms. And I'm not critical of the platforms. I'm critical of who Meta allow on the platforms. And, at the Joint Select Committee in Canberra, looking at a recommendation that goes to Parliament in August, and we're hoping that it will pass. Interesting, they interviewed Meta as part of their due diligence, and the Vice President got on there, or Vice Chairman said, Antigone Davis said that she didn't believe that social media was damaging children. Yet only 3 weeks after that, Meta froze 63,000 Nigerian Facebook accounts because they were considered dangerous.
Yeah.
Says it all.
I read an alarming stat, Wayne. I think it was sexual extortion was up by 400% or something like that. And what are some of the warning signs? What are some of the alarm bells, especially parents that might be listening to this, and what they can do to keep their kids safe?
Yeah, it's a real battle. It is bad, and we won't shy away from that. You would say in most households, the only argument the kids have with their parents is when the parents said, turn your computer off, or give me your iPad, or that's enough for the night, after 3 or 4 hours. And we know that kids that are on it for more than 3 hours a day have a 50% more chance of becoming depressed and anxious. So it's not good. So the warning signs are this, that they spend far too much time in their bedrooms alone. Yeah. That you don't know what they're on, that they then, if they are interacting with people, they don't know who they're interacting with. I mean, Mac was, liaising with whom he thought was an 18-year-old female, yet, it turned out that she was a front for a 45-year-old person that was living in Liverpool, New South Wales, called Min Tridu. And I can talk about him because he was charged and it's on record. And so, he had already hacked into Mac's account within 30 minutes. And the woman, or the girl that he used as bait was his 13-year-old niece.
Oh.
So they're the sorts of people that are inhabiting these platforms. And so, the parents, you have to be on guard. You have to ask questions that you've never asked before about what are you on? Show me. Okay, there's a limit after a certain time. It's got to come down. But if we can get legislation, James, in place, it's just like them wearing a safety belt. So, if you're a child and you go in a car, you've got to wear a safety belt. Otherwise, mum and dad get fined.
Yeah.
So in this case, if you're not 16, you can't use it. And mum and dad can then say, well, darling, or young lad, you can't use it. That's the law. It's not my choice. It's the law. So it gives them some sort of safety net. But until that, they're just got to be diligent, because if they don't, their child will be extorted, as you said, mate, up 400%. And coincidentally, no, it's not coincidence, that the suicide rate in Australia is up 17% in the first quarter of this year compared to last.
That's insane, mate.
There's a correlation, without doubt.
Wow. Yeah. Those stats, Wayne, are really alarming, mate. They really are. And I think, we have a day in Australia called Are You OK Day? And it's only one question. I think there needs to be some follow-up questions. But regarding, obviously, suicide prevention, what do you think are some of the follow-up questions that you could probably ask somebody that's in a crisis situation?
Yeah, without doubt. It's a really good question again. The Are You OK concept is terrific in the sense of their concept is that you ask the are you okay that starts a conversation. But there's a couple of things that are flawed with that. What about if the person you ask says, no, I'm not okay? You're not equipped. You don't know what to do. And what about if the person said, yes, I'm fine, and then talks about every other thing under the sun? I ask Mac every day in the car, how you going, mate? Are you okay? He said, yeah, Dad, I'm great. What's the footy score? Or what's the cricket score?
Yeah.
Or how's basketball going? He was deflecting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the follow-up questions, it maybe ask you, are you okay? But that is a closed question. And all the salespeople out there will know that you don't get a sale by asking a closed question. You need to get the customer talking. So you need to get your kids talking. You have to ask open-ended question. How was your day today? How happy are you? Those open-ended questions. And also, and this is tough. Like, we've never been asked to do this before. But if we see a person, a friend or a family member or one of our tribe limping, we'd say, oh, what's wrong? Or they've got a cut on their eye.
Yeah.
What happened? And you're asking several questions. Oh, how did it happen? How many stitches? How many weeks will you won't be playing sport? Whatever it might be. But with mental health, you can't see it. But let's get into the habit of asking, how's your mental fitness going? Like, we know you're fit to play sport, but how's your mental fitness going? Tell me out of 10 how it is. So if they say it's 8 or 9, so that's great. Well done. Terrific.
Yeah.
But what about if they say it's 2 or 3? What you've got is a perfect opportunity to save their life, because you know what to do thereafter. That I know that now because I've been trained and I educate others. But there's millions of people out there that don't know what to do and are frightened to ask those questions. So you never know. The next time you see them might be in a coffin.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a famous story, a famous photo, I should say, Wayne, of a man that was just about to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. And I think there was a police officer that was talking to this individual, must be for a few hours. And this sort of sparked a very much needed talk about mental health. And the idea, I think, now more than ever is there needs to be a space in particular for men to be able to express their vulnerability in a safe way. One of the most challenging things for a man too, Wayne, in this day and age is being able to actually expressively show vulnerability. It is extremely difficult because we worry and we're apprehensive about what our peers will think, what society will think of us. And this is the problem. We know that, I think, I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's 3 or 4 men commit suicide at a higher rate compared to women. It's insane. Do you think there needs to be more education on how that we can, deliver expressively and honestly towards men opening up, but creating a safe space?
Yeah, you're right. And the facts are right that there's more men that take their life than women. However, having said that, there is a small increase percentage wise in young girls taking their life. And there's no doubt that's associated with, body shaming on social media and bullying and so forth, without doubt. But yeah, men, unfortunately, don't talk enough. In general, don't talk enough, don't express themselves because they do feel vulnerable. They don't want to be seen to be weak. But what they have to understand, the education, and it has to start when they're in primary school, boys in primary school, because I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to get men to evolve, like you and I, for example, and me particularly at my age. I hug men now. I speak about my life. I very rarely talk about the news. It's more about how I'm feeling and ask questions to them, how they're feeling. We hug, we talk. We don't have our mobile phones on at all. They're turned off. And we're not talking about the cricket and the footy have over a beer. We're sitting down like you and I in an environment where there's no distractions. So we need to continue to educate men to be better listeners, to ask more questions, and then on the flip side, for men to be vulnerable and to answer those questions honestly and not just say, oh, I'm fine, I'm too tough to care. That's crap. You're not. And that's why there's so many men passing away through suicide. But we need to start at junior ranks. And when I speak to kids, at secondary college, it's one of the messages that I do give the boys in the group, that they need to have the courage. And I refer to it like any other sport. When you go in and get the ball, head over the ball, hard tackle, they're great strengths to have, but a much greater strength is saving somebody, and your legacy is saving, and age is no barrier to that. So young boys, start to get in tune with your feelings, start to get in tune with other boys' feelings, and help them, because we're all going to, 1 in 5 Australians either have, are, or will have suicidal thoughts. So, 1 in 5 in every room is in that space. So we've got to help them. So, but men particularly. And, I was with people this afternoon, that run a program around mentoring young people, and particularly men, to be better men, and part of that is to be vulnerable. Part of it is to express themselves and not be frightened, to be strong. And strength comes in many fashions. It's not arm wrestling. It's not getting a hard ball all the time. It's about being able to express yourselves and help others. That's real strength.
Yeah, definitely, Wayne. And your vision with SmackTalk, inspiring. It's motivating. But what's some of the education that you talk about with your program?
Yep. It goes for about 40 minutes, James, and the one that I mostly present is to adults, and there's sporting clubs, there's corporates, there's many corporates, there's basketball associations, there's a whole range of different parents at schools and all that. So I start off with the lived experience. I talk about what happened. Because I think that not enough people talk about, what actually happened and the circumstances, and not necessarily what he did, which I do briefly talk about, but the immediate impact straight away. 14-year-old sister, brothers I had to call, his grandmother that not only lost a grandson, but lost her only child, 100 days before, all those sorts of hard discussions. So I talk about that, and that it's real, and it could happen to anyone. 801 people in Victoria alone last year, 2.5 times the road toll, 60 people drowned, 801 took their own lives. So it's massively
crazy, mate. Crazy.
So I talk about that. I talk about the facts and data. I talk about the increase that we're experiencing this year. And then I talk about, right, we're drawing a line in the sand here and we are going to save lives. And this is the way we're going to do it. I talk about the family, village, tribe, your immediate family, your village, your immediate family and others. And your tribe is maybe your work or your sporting club or your, whatever it might be, club. That's your tribe, your church group. They're your tribe. And so I teach people how to see the signs, the signs that people are struggling, the fact that they're not doing what they would normally do. They'd normally ride their bike for enjoyment and they stop doing it. They're normally always on time and now all of a sudden they're becoming late. They smell of alcohol very early in the morning. All those definite signs that something's not right. Young boys that have their first girlfriend and the girlfriend breaks it off, they're at massive risk. They're at massive risk. The stats say that those boys have suicidal thoughts immediately and many act upon them immediately. So if you know of a breakup, you go there and spend time with them. Don't waste time. Forget about what else is in your life. Get to them and protect them and support them. Let them cry on your shoulder. Get help for them immediately. So they're the signs, and there's many other signs. Then I talk about the listening skills. When someone does open up to you, that you got the ability to ask those open-ended questions and to listen, to ask more questions and to repeat the question so as that they know that you're listening to them. To be in not the moment, to be in their moment. So nothing else matters. They're those listening skills, but then it's important that if you have someone that's crying, that's shaking, that can't look you in the eye and may say, I don't want to do this anymore. And you ask them, have they got suicidal thoughts? They say, yeah, I do. To know what to do, to ring Lifeline, to get them support immediately, but don't leave their side. Take them to where they've got to go. Get them help. Bring them back home. Be with them that night. Look after them. That's what I do with SmackTalk.
Yeah. And how do you address the stigma towards mental health, Wayne? Because it's just this is the problem I think that we're facing right now is there is still that stigma. And as you were talking about before, when you can see something physically on somebody, whether it be a broken arm or leg, but you can't really see mental health. Yeah. How do you grapple the stigma?
Yeah, I think we should change it to mental fitness, make it more normal, just like physical fitness, mental fitness, and change the vernacular. Don't talk about mental health because it's got a stigma. When I was growing up many years ago, that if someone had a mental issue, we considered them stupid, silly, and should be in a padded cell somewhere. And they were lunatics. That's how we thought about them. We've evolved as people and community standards have changed, thank goodness, across a myriad of things, more respect and responsibility towards women and a whole range of things that we've evolved. So we need to change the vernacular, stop calling it mental health and ask people how their mental fitness is going and get the kids that, when they go into primary school, treat it as a normal ailment. It's not something, mental health, that's a bit crazy. No, it's just part of life. Has your mental fitness, has your mental capacity, has your physical fitness in the same breath. That will change it. And then because newspapers and governments haven't wanted to be anywhere near it because no one talks about it. They want to shove it under the carpet. And it wasn't until, 4 or 5 weeks ago that we finally got it on the front page with News Corp that now it's resonating and they've got to face it. And if they start talking about it as normal, then everyone will start, so it's got to become normal. It's got to be a cultural change and we'll get there.
Yeah. I like what you said about mental fitness, Wayne. I'm heavily into martial arts, mate. I've been fighting for 30 years. And, I teach children martial arts as well. And I think it's just such an important tool that putting yourself into difficult situations voluntarily, I call it voluntary adversity, putting yourself into uncomfortable positions. Obviously, the whole thing with the ice bath that people are doing, it's doing difficult things. These are sort of things that can be told and incorporated into schools, don't you think, as well, Wayne?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we've got some really good news that there's a local secondary college not far from my work in Victoria, and they have committed to including in their curriculum a syllabus on mental fitness for the first time in history. So it now becomes a topic that kids have to go through and understand and pass. I think it should be brought back to primary school. I really do. I think it should be brought back to years 5 and 6. And then there's a syllabus every year from year 7 all the way through to year 12 on mental fitness. So it's ingrained, and it'll only take 10 years and everyone will be talking about mental fitness. It's a really good question.
Yeah. And I think, you said you touched on social media, and I think there's pros and cons with everything. And I think you nailed it in the sense that social media has been used as the tool to really get the message through. But what can be done as well as educating kids on social media?
Yeah, well, there's no safe place on social media, on the internet for children at the moment. And so we have to work with Meta and the government to ensure that we're working together for the safety of our children, but at the same time, give them access to the internet, which is so good in the sense of educational, the good stuff, being able to go on there and read the news and to get an understanding of a whole range of things that are real positive, to go on there and to research, science and research, biology. It's magnificent. The resources are great. It's being able to give the kids the wherewithal to draw a line, because no matter what we put in place, whether it's 16, that they can't access TikTok and Instagram and any other of the Meta platforms until they're 16, they'll get around them. Meta will get around them. But we've got to educate the kids to know. And it's just like drink driving. We have to educate kids when they finally get their license. They just don't do it. We can't stop them doing it, just like we can't stop kids getting onto these programs they shouldn't. But there's consequences. And so they've got to understand that there's consequences associated with that. So that's got to be our thrust. We have to.
And can you just quickly run through some of the warning signs, especially if you think a loved one might be considering taking their own life? You mentioned that withdrawal from certain activities. What are some of the warning signs?
Yeah, certainly that withdrawal, that they're normally happy-go-lucky. They go to functions and all of a sudden don't go anymore, don't want to go, spend far too much time, a lot of time in isolation. By that I mean they're in their rooms on their own, or in their office, in their office at work on their own and not engaging. That withdrawal is an obvious one. Not doing what they would normally do. And I'll give you an example. Mac used to love riding his bicycle. He used to love it. And in the winter time, when there was puddles on the side of the road, sorry to say that he'd love riding his bike through the puddles. And if he sprayed people that were pedestrians, that'd be fun, but he loved riding his bike. And so after he passed away, I was outside cleaning up a few things and his bike was there, and I lifted it up and I felt the tyres and they were flat. Hadn't ridden his bike for weeks, possibly months. So when people are doing something that they love, a passion that they have, it might be painting, it might be jogging, and they all of a sudden stop doing it, you have to ask them why. You used to love riding your bike. How come you don't? Oh, I just don't feel like it anymore. Why? And just keep asking those open-ended questions. And so that's two things. If they're doing things that they don't normally do, for an example, if they're drinking a lot more alcohol, you smell it on their breath in the morning, that they've potentially had a breakup. It doesn't have to be young people, it can be middle-aged men or women that have had a breakup, because it's traumatic, because they lose contact with their children on a regular basis. They have to, separate the assets. It's really traumatic. So if you know someone that's going through that, they're signs, without doubt. And the research says quite clearly that anniversaries are a big challenge. And a lot of people, you know, a year after something happens, 100 days, in Mac's case was 100 days after his natural mum passed away. So those anniversaries are a sign. So you have to be diligent as a friend, as part of a tribe, to write in your diary that, you know, this is a date that this happened for this person. So when it comes up in 12 months or a couple of days before, go up to them saying, I know that in a couple of days, it'll be a year since your wife passed away.
Yeah.
Let's have a chat about it. How are you feeling? How are you coping? What are you doing on that day? So there are a few signs, James, that are real obvious ones. You know, the withdrawal's a big one. The non-trusting, in some managers too, the micromanagement, they fly off the handle really quickly. All those things that are unusual. Don't be frightened to ask the question, what is up?
And that would be the same follow-up questions possibly in the workplace too, yeah?
Oh, without doubt. Yeah, definitely. And just because it's a workplace doesn't mean anything, you know, like whether it's your boss, whether it's someone that reports to you, makes no difference. They're all people and they'll appreciate it. And don't be frightened. They'll say, oh, thanks for asking. I really appreciate that. But I'm feeling pretty good. And then say, how happy are you? You don't appear to be happy. You know, is there something that is bothering you? Now, don't be frightened to ask those, because the worst case scenario is that they can say, I'm fine. Leave me alone. And that's okay. But the best scenario is if they say, no, I'm not traveling all that well at all. Do you mind if we have a chat? You've just hooked a fish. James, you've just hooked a fish and you potentially could save their life. So, you know, there's some of the open-ended questions and the signs.
And what's been the response like, Wayne, with some of the people that have been attending your sessions?
Well, they've been really surprised with the statistics. They've been gobsmacked with the statistics. They are really surprised that some of the questions that they need to ask, they're confronting. Like, not many people would have asked the question, have you got suicidal thoughts, with a person that looks like they're really struggling. It's confronting. So they've been surprised with that. They've been surprised that I can present 39 weeks after, you know, a tragedy. But then the response afterwards is a giveaway, because they don't always come up afterwards. Some people will send me an email. Some people will send me a text message, and there's follow-up work for me then, because I then have to make sure that these people are okay. Because often they'll say, oh, Wayne, my son is in exactly the same position that your son's in, and he's talking about, you know, taking his life. And at least then they've got the tools to be able to go forward. And I remind them of some of those tools which are on the website. The response has been enormous. I can't keep up with the demand. And I haven't even had to spruik any business that just comes to me. It's free. It's a not-for-profit. It's a registered charity. And the more people I can get out to see, the better we have of reducing that.
Yeah. And what are some of the alarming stats? You just covered a lot of them, but possibly in the last couple of years, you know, what are some of the alarming stats that you've read?
Well, the biggest one is it's the biggest killer of people between 18 and 24.
18 to 24.
18 to 24 in Australia. The age is reducing in terms of kids taking their life. The biggest increase comparatively, it's not the biggest increase, but comparatively, is in young girls and older men. And it's no coincidence that in Nigeria, there's a building, a 12-story building, with people from the top floor to the bottom sitting on the carpet, not on a seat or a desk, on carpet with their laptop. And they've got KPIs around how many people they scam and collect money from. And typically, those people that are being targeted are young girls and young boys and older men, because they're easy targets. because they don't understand the internet as well.
How are they getting access? Is it through Meta platforms or is it Snapchat or where is it?
Most of them are Meta platforms. Some aren't, but generally they're platforms that older people, not necessarily, they might be just on Facebook, for an example, and they'll respond to someone. I've seen it regularly where people will mimic somebody else and say, "G'day, James. It's Wayne here. Thanks for the chat the other night. Do you think you might be able to help me? I'm in a real pickle here. I only need $1,000 and I'll be able to pay you back in 24 hours. And here's my bank account details, and you're such a kind man." You say, "Oh yeah, no worries." Now you wouldn't, because you understand that the scamming, but an older person goes, "Oh, I've got to help you, and help," and they're scammed. And unfortunately, if they give their bank account details, they're often hacked as well, and their life savings are hacked. So it's a major problem.
And this particular individual that sadly and tragically extorted your son, he only got slapped with about 5 months jail time. Is that correct?
Yeah, he did. The background to that was that the magistrate and the defence and the prosecution came to an agreement that if he pleaded guilty to a lesser offence, the offence of receiving the proceeds of crime, that they would accept that. Yet they had enough evidence, I believe, to charge him with sexual extortion. But because, in my opinion, the rate of crime is so high, it was in Liverpool, the rate of crime was so high in that region that they're just wanting to get people through. And unfortunately, the magistrate allowed it. And I have no doubt, James, that man, he's already out. He was out in March. I have no doubt that person, Min Trido, is out there now doing exactly the same thing.
Bullshit. Yeah,
it is. It is.
Yeah.
It's wrong. And we as a society, James, we have to take responsibility for that. We can't accept that any longer. So, I've been lobbying as well, government around not just that decision, but other decisions exactly the same. Just because there's a backlog doesn't mean that we let these predators, these evil predators, these germs get out there and continue to destroy our kids.
Yeah. Wayne, can you talk about the 15-year-old boy that reached out to you?
Yeah, I can, and I'm happy to do that. I did a presentation on a Sunday morning. There was around about 80 or 90 people, and they were all supposed to be adults. And so I presented, I answered a couple of questions at the end, then drove home. In that afternoon, Sunday afternoon, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognise, but I pick up every call now. And it was this young voice, a young male voice, and he said that he was at my session this morning. And I said, "How old are you?" And he said, 15. I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Where's mum and dad?" And he said, "Well, mum's with me and you're on loudspeaker." I said, "Okay, what can I help you with?" And he said, "Wayne, I was on a bridge last night." And the background was he was on the bridge and he was ready to jump down. It was over 20 metres and it was rocks. And so the only thing that saved him was a coincidence that his mum rang whilst he was on the bridge, and she bluffed and said to him, "Get off, I've got this thing organised for you tomorrow to see a basketball guy in this group, and he'll be able to help you." And it just clicked with him because he was a basketballer. And he got off and he went back with his mum, and he was telling me this. And so I said, "Stop." I went to the family house, put my arm around him and mum, called Lifeline together. We got help immediately, drove them there and back. And that boy is still alive now and was ringing me at 7 o'clock for about 2 weeks in a row. Just ringing saying, "G'day Wayne, how's the basketball?" But he wasn't ringing about that. He was telling me that he was still with us. And so that was a remarkable story, I think. And we're really proud of that. And there was actually two kids about that age that very similar scenarios, that were able to help. But that one sticks in my mind.
Yeah, that's amazing, mate. And what an incredible, what an incredible person you are, mate. And just obviously in everything that's happened thus far, and just the impact that you're making, the positive impact, and just being able to change and transform lives. But what is some of the work that needs to be done within the Queensland government?
Yeah, well, all government, I think it starts at federal government. They first of all have to understand that suicide is a significant issue, which they do now understand, that suicide prevention is really important, that currently of the $8 billion invested by the federal government, which is enough, I think, it's not weighted properly. It's 99% to post and only 1% to prevention. Needs to change. The percentage needs to change. And they understand that, and they're going to work towards that. So that's what the federal government can do, and that'll permeate throughout the states. The state government have to also make sure that they invest in the mental health and mental fitness of their constituents, because it's, apart from anything else, it's a really costly thing. So prevent children from getting into a state, and therefore you're going to save money down the end. So even if it's altruistic, that's some good. I don't care what their motivation is. So governments have to do that. Governments have to unanimously lift the age to 16 in August, and then pass legislation in November to protect our kids. So that's what government can do immediately. So they're two things. They need to understand it's an epidemic. More people have died in the last 2 years since COVID through suicide than people died of COVID.
Yeah.
So, it's a no-brainer. So they're the two major things that we're lobbying government on, and hope that and I'm sure, I've got faith in them, both sides. It's going to be a tight election, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. And Wayne, how are you doing, mate? How are you coping with everything?
Yeah, thanks for asking, James. I really appreciate it, mate. I have my ups and downs, There's sometimes it's really difficult, but there hasn't been a day that I haven't wanted to get out of bed and to make a difference, and use Mac's death as a catalyst to do more in this space. I've got a fantastic counsellor from Support After Suicide, Adrian Price. He's just a superstar. He's helped me through. And so it's not easy, mate. It's not easy, but someone's got to do it, and I'm putting a fork in the road and saying it's me, and we're gonna follow, and we're gonna change things. It's about leadership too, and you understand leadership better than most, and it's about showing leadership in these really harsh times. It's all very well to be a good mate and to be a good leader when everything's going well, but it's when the chips are down and you need a good friend, you need good leaders.
Yeah,
you and I.
I have a friend of mine, Wayne. He's an ex-Special Forces commando. He's also a martial artist as well. I trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with him, but he wrote a fantastic piece. I'll have to send it to you. It's called The Last Gift. And the message of The Last Gift is, if that family member was looking down upon you, they would obviously want you to continue to, persevere and just push through. And he talked about the pain that they give you is to reteach you on how to live, how to truly live, to live to your authentic self, and, to push through plateaus and make a difference. It's their last gift. I'll have to send it through to you, mate. It's a fantastic piece.
Yeah. I'd love to see that, mate.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about, isn't it? There was 3 things I could have done after Mac passed away, and one of them was to take my own life. I had suicidal thoughts for 3 or 4 weeks, and I put my hand up, and that's the way it was. And I'm proud of that, actually, because I'm proud that I've been able to get out of that rut, I suppose. And then the second thing I could have done was just live a shadow of the life I wanted to live in that, shadow, and blame everybody, blame myself. Or the third thing was to use Mac's death as a catalyst to change Australia, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, amazing, mate. Wayne, it's been an absolute privilege, mate, sitting down with you, and just the work that you're doing is commendable, mate, and I can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing. And where can people find you, Wayne?
Yeah, thank you. www.smacktalk.com.au or Instagram, and it's good stuff. It's not evil. Is SmackTalk 2106. It really helps me if people go on there and like it, because when I go to governments and talk about the number of people that are following, it's really important. Those facts and data are really important.
Yeah.
Mate, James, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all the really good work that you're doing. I commend it entirely and highly. And congratulations, mate. It's been a pleasure to be here tonight.
Thank you so much, Wayne. No, it's been great chatting to you, mate. And I will speak to you soon.
Good on you. Thanks very much. Good on you, James. Thanks, brother.